My name is Sam. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager here at Fairygodboss. And Fairygodboss is the largest career community for women. Our mission is to improve the workplace by increasing transparency. We offer a ton of great free resources like anonymous company reviews, job listings, articles, virtual recruiting events, and so much more to help you succeed throughout your career. We will be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. You'll find the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, right where you found your chat. And feel free to leave questions as yourself or anonymously. We'll get to as many as possible at the end. We're also recording today's session. So if you miss anything or you want to rewatch this back at any point, you'll have the ability to do so. We'll email it to you directly by the end of the day, as well as post it to the events page where you first registered. So you can always go back there if you happen to lose the email. Here with me today is Janice Scholl, host of the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast, guest speaker, workshop facilitator, and a money and career transition coach. Through her work as a coach, speaker, workshop facilitator, and host of the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcasts, Janice helps professional and business owner moms master money and career challenges so they can feel confident and connected as a mom while they build a strong financial foundation for their families. Her areas of focus to help mothers succeed are maternity leave planning, career breaks and transitions, and values-based budgeting. Thanks so much for being here today, Janice. I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks so much for having me. Hi, everyone. As Sam mentioned, I'm Janice Scholl, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about how to turn your career break into a strategic sabbatical. Now, for the purpose of this webinar, this is what I'd like to accomplish. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about me and why I do the work that I do. And we're going to go through some goals for the webinar for today. And then I'm going to give you a framework that I'd really like you to start implementing into your daily life today. It's something that you can find a strategy for immediately to really improve your exit from a career break, whenever that may be. And then, as Sam mentioned, we'll also have some time for Q&A, and I hope we can get to talk about all of your personal circumstances and your questions as well. As she was reading through the list of people all over, career breaks, no boundaries. Everyone across the country is challenged right now, and there are many mothers today and before 2020, before COVID, were taking career breaks as well, and we'll talk about that a little bit also. So a little bit more about me. I'm a wife and a mom of 2 kids. Our family has lived in 2 countries outside of the US. And I mention that for a few reasons. One, because living outside of our kind of home country gave us the opportunity to try and learn in new perspectives that we hadn't been exposed to in the past. It also launched 2 of my career breaks. I've taken 2, I've successfully returned from 2. And it also exposed me to many women in particular who were taking career breaks, because oftentimes I knew trailing spouses who had left their careers, and they came from every walk of life. And so that really inspired me to want to work on career break transitions and help women achieve their goals of getting back into the workforce. As Sam mentioned, I'm the host of the Money, Career, and Motherhood podcast, and that is such a fun thing that I started in 2020 and has given me the opportunity to learn from and meet so many women on their journey to manage all of those things. I also advise and mentor female entrepreneurs, and many of them are starting businesses due to lifestyle needs. And often that can come at the end of a career break when they're assessing their personal needs and what they want to accomplish in their career goals in the future. They find that entrepreneurship sometimes is the best way for them to do that. And I also have an MBA from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Now, the only reason this is important to you is because it gave me the opportunity right after my daughter was born to work on a research project that addressed women's career trajectory and the impact of MBA matriculation. And so basically what that means was I was looking at how to increase female participation in the MBA program. And in order to do that, I had to look at what was happening in a woman's career at the time that most would start MBA programs. And guess what? It's motherhood and it's career breaks. They had a major impact on that. And it made me realize that as I was working and going to business school and had a daughter of my own that I was trying to maneuver and figure out motherhood, I realized I wasn't alone and that so many other women were struggling with the same types of issues that I was as I balanced all of those things and considered whether or not a career break was right for me. Now, today's goals, we can't do everything in this 1 hour, but what we can do is really empower you to understand the realities of taking a family-led career break and understand what it takes to return from a career break. What I've often found are that the fears that we have about returning to the workforce are different than the realities of the challenges we face. And so by changing our perspective, and really reframing the focus from what are we afraid of to what are our actual challenges and how can we overcome those, we can be so much more strategic along the path of our career break to enable us to get back in. And lastly, I want you to have the opportunity today to start to develop in your mind what would be the strategy that you'd like to implement for your successful return. So for the purpose of this webinar, let's talk about what are we calling a career break. And a career break really is an intentional break in your career for personal or education reasons, which can last from 6 months up to any amount of time. For the purpose of our discussion, I want to focus on career breaks that are a year or longer that are due to family reasons. Now, these are started sometimes by maternity leave, they're started by a baby, but they definitely don't have to be the catalyst of having a baby. If they are really when a woman has the decision, makes the decision to take a break for family reasons without the promise of future employment. That to me is the most important part that we need to understand about a career break is we're exiting and we don't know what's coming next. We don't know what our return, if ever it will happen, is going to look like. Now, what's a sabbatical? And really, what are we talking about when we say turn our career break into a strategic sabbatical? Now, a sabbatical is an extended period of leave from one's customary work, especially for rest, to acquire new skills or training. Now, oftentimes when you hear sabbatical, it's from the perspective of leaving your job for a period of time and then returning to that job. There is the promise of future employment. Now, that part is not relevant to us, but what is relevant, and maybe not the rest part, because if this is a family-led career break and we have kids, we might not be resting that much when we're on our career break. But what I want people to realize is that a career break is a tremendous opportunity for you to develop fresh perspectives, for you to try new things, take risks that you've never been able to take before because of the constraints that your traditional employment and the hours, the demands on your time have not allowed you to take. So being strategic on how you're going to use that time rather than just letting the career break happen to you can really give you the ability to change that career break, which feels really passive and just something that happens, to a strategic sabbatical where you're working through that time with intent, with the end in mind. So let's talk about career breaks from the perspective of who is taking them. Now, many of you may have heard about the Women in the Workplace report put together by Lean In and McKinsey. And they've been doing this report for 6 years. But this year, as you can imagine, 2020 was very different. And we all know this from a personal perspective, that life was dramatically impacted. Our work and our children came together in conflict in a way that we really had never experienced before. And they found that 1 in 4 women were either stepping out of the workforce, considering stepping out of the workforce, or stepping back. Now, 1 in 4 may not sound like that much, but remember, this is across all ages. So when you look at it from a perspective of those family years, the number is significantly higher. Now, you can see here what statistic I'm showing, and that is 43% of highly qualified women take career breaks. It is really important for you to understand that career breaks are normal, and they are normal for career-driven women, nearly half, and this statistic was well before COVID. So so often we feel like when we're on a career break, we're on our own. And that's because there really hasn't been an established process by many companies. They are starting more and more realize today that they need to, but you feel like you're on an island on your own and you really have to create your own process. But by using some of the research and the experience of women who have successfully returned, we can really do something more effective. And it's really important for me to advocate for career breakers and to empower employers to take steps to try and address this 43%. Now, of the women who take career breaks, nearly all intend to return. And the reality looks a little different. So of the women who take career breaks, 74, about 3/4, do return to the workforce at some point. But only 40% of the returners are going back to professional full-time positions. Now, if that is your choice and you don't want to go back to a professional full-time position, more power to you. I want you to be empowered to do what is best for you. But many of the women want to return to their former path, or they want to challenge themselves through a new path that is still professional full-time work. So that number to me is really alarming. And when you take a break, earning potential is reduced significantly. And it's going to vary depending on the industry you work in and the length of your break. So in certain industries, 18% for a 1-year break is pretty common, but up to over 25% and up to almost 40% is going to be common for something that's 3+ years. And in some of the, higher professional paths like attorney or finance and things like that, where it's just a little less conventional to take an extended career break. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, I thought this was about how the good news about career breaks. This is not the good news, but it's important to understand the reality so that we can create a solution that actually addresses the challenges that we do face. So I wonder what everybody thinks about their career break. What I found when I was in my career break and when I started talking to other women about it, I kind of had all of these thoughts going through my head, sometimes almost on a daily basis. And how am I going to get back in? What should I be talking about with people while I'm out? How am I going to explain the length of my break? There are so many concerns that go through our heads as we're trying to navigate a career break if we remain professionally minded at the end. And I find that most common are the lists that you see, but explaining the leave and de-skilling are the most concerning to most of the women I talk to. Everyone thinks of how am I going to address this leave as I'm sitting in an interview with somebody and they ask about it. And this is the reality. We focus our attention on our initial decision to take the career break, not on our ultimate goal of returning. And if we focus our goal on returning when we exit, or at any point we decide to engage on work to prepare us to return, then explaining that leave really gets diffused. So when we talk about de-skilling and we talk about explaining the leave, what is the conventional return from career break wisdom that we hear? We hear write a really great resume and have a great cover letter and be confident in explaining your break. Now, when you say to people, be confident in explaining their break, most of us interpret that as explain why you took the break. We must justify our time out of the office. And really, I want everyone to get away from that perspective, because while the decision to take a career break may have impacted your career, what you do and the skills you develop and the personal changes that you go through during that break are so much more impactful than the initial decision that you made to take time out of the workforce. And it really empowers you to change from a perspective of passive explaining and hoping almost in an apologetic way about your break to this is what I did with my time, and this is how I remained professionally involved. And writing a killer resume and a cover letter is so much easier when, again, you begin with that end in mind, because you're thinking every day along your path during your career break, what exactly am I going to talk about on that end goal of having a killer resume? And I totally think you should have a killer resume. I think you should engage help outside of yourself to write that, whether it's by paying somebody to professionally write one for you, or you have some people in your network that you trust and that can do a great job of helping you. It is really so effective to have somebody else look at that and give you feedback and understand how to present yourself in the workforce 2, 3, 4 years down the road from the time that you left. So to develop an effective strategic sabbatical, we need to address the different areas of your life that ultimately affect your career path. And to me, that really involves having a personal growth path, a professional growth path, and a networking growth path that you are working in tandem during your break. And again, for anyone who's already been on an extended break and they're like, well, wait a minute, it's been 5 years and I haven't done this stuff, that's okay. This is something that you can implement today, and it doesn't have to have begun the day you left your career. You can start this at any time. But in any case, any time spent on these activities will help you improve your quality of return. And you're going to hear a couple of stories that are going to help highlight some of the ways each of these different areas can impact your career return. So let's talk about your personal strategy first. And I want you to meet Nora. Now, Nora is someone who took an extended break. She took a 5-year break, and she loved her career before she had kids. But for a variety of reasons, she decided to take time out. And she was ready when her second child was going into first grade to start to look for employment again. And she always knew that she wanted to go back to her original career path. But as she went through the process, she received a great offer. She had a Silicon Valley finance manager position lined up, ready for her to accept. And she couldn't figure out why. Suddenly, she was really uncomfortable with it. It offered her the salary, she like better than she was expecting, better than she was hoping for. It was her path back to her old employment, and yet she really wasn't satisfied with it. And it made her realize that she wasn't the same person that left the workforce 5 years before. Now, we have women who are at different stages of their career break all through the process. And whether you've been in it for 6 months or you've been in it for 6 years or 16 years, ask yourself, am I the same person who left? Most of us will say no. Life experience changes us, and being a mother changes us. So it's important for us to look at ourselves and understand what's important to us and really address that first before we start seeking future employment, because it's going to help us understand what we want in the future and what is going to be an effective career for us. Now, one of the steps in that process is really creating purpose. When we left the workforce, we did so for a reason, and our career gave us certain benefits, but they changed while we were out. And one of the big changes I see in women during their career break is paycheck versus purpose. Many have left the workforce and have accepted that loss of income. And when they want to go back to the workforce, they don't necessarily want to trade dollars for time in the same way that they did when they used to in their old life. And it's really important to understand what motivates you, what's important to you. For this woman, she had the offer of the salary, but that wasn't actually a motivator anymore, while it was 5 years prior. So understanding if you need something different to motivate you from your experience. And identifying that at the forefront can help you strategically choose in the future what career break or what career path is right for you. The other thing, building confidence is so important. I had someone tell me recently that the thing that she thinks goes first, that you miss the most first, even before the paycheck, is the loss of self-confidence when you take a career break. Many women struggle with what their wealth versus worth is. When we stop receiving a paycheck, we feel a loss of self-confidence. And I really want to empower everyone to take steps today to recognize the excellent things you're doing every single day. I mean, the fact that we are all surviving right now after a tremendously impactful year, we are helping our kids navigate this. We are doing so many great things, but they might not be for pay today. And finding ways to build your confidence so that you can set yourself in front of an employer in the future and say, hey, these are skills that I have. These are things that I've accomplished. They may not have been in a cubicle, but I've done some really great things, and feeling confident enough to say that is important. And then finally, finding time. Going back to work is like putting a golf ball in a cup that's filled to the top with water. Something's got to give, and something's got to give today if we want to incorporate different activities like a strategic sabbatical into our life. So finding ways to create efficiencies in your day, to create time so that you can allocate it differently is really important. And then it will empower you to be able to integrate your work life in the future when you do go back to work. So next, I want to talk about how to develop a professional strategy. And I want you to meet Janice. And Janice is not me, Janice. This is actually a different woman. And she was a guest on my podcast recently. And she is a phenomenal woman. And I highly recommend anybody checking it out if you want to. Her name is Janice Powers. And she is the founder of a cutting edge healthcare tech startup. Now, she does not sound like the type of woman who takes a career break. She is a go-getter. She is highly educated with degrees from University of Michigan and Yale. She was an excellent healthcare consultant before she took time out of the workforce, but she did. And this is the reality about today's career breakers. They're anyone and everyone. But what she did during her career break was she tried everything. She did so many activities that were completely unrelated to her original career path of consulting in the healthcare industry. And not only did it teach her new skills, it gave her a new perspective. So she exited the healthcare industry and she wrote a book. She wrote a fiction book and a nonfiction book. She started a company selling merchandise related to the fictional book she wrote. She did so many different things. She wrote for the HuffPost. She got interested in social issues that she felt were important. And she learned how to position herself in the marketplace. She learned how to spin a story and tell people effectively what she wanted to tell them, even when sometimes their ideas were different than hers. She learned skills like how to apply for a trademark because she had to go through that process when she had started her business. And all of it, although she didn't know it at the time, perfectly positioned her to be the founder of her company. So when she went back to go into the workforce years later, she went back into healthcare and said, hey, wait a minute. Things have happened in the industry and it's not going the way I think it should be going. We're not fixing healthcare the way I believe it should have been fixed. And it wasn't until she was able to have that step out experience and return with a renewed perspective. All of the skills that she originally acquired, all that knowledge was still there, but she now had new skills and a new perspective that she could step out and say, hey, wait, no, I think that there's something different we should do. And I'm going to start a company. I'm going to solve this problem. So when you look at your professional strategy, it is about protecting your existing skills partly. You want to find ways to remain professionally engaged with the things that you care about, but it's also about identifying your zone of genius and learning how to write your own story and finding ways to learn. Now, this does not have to be done in a traditional employment setting. I want every woman to know that I am 100% supportive of your career break. This does not have to be go back to work. But there are so many ways that we can learn remotely today on our own schedule and for nothing or virtually nothing, that we just have access to so much, but it requires us to develop a strategy of what we want to remain engaged in. We can continue to pay attention to industry reports, and the top consulting companies all have high content, industry focused research materials that are accessible to us for free. And that's one way that if you want to get back to your old industry, stay involved in that industry news. It's also understanding where people come to you, even when you're out of the workforce. And then you take a look at, okay, what do people ask me for while I'm not working? And what are these professional skills I have? And then how does that create my zone of genius? Where is it that I feel empowered to speak, empowered to act, and people recognize the work that I do, and I have skills to successfully accomplish that? And then, of course, it's learn every day. I mentioned earlier that you really don't ever have the same opportunity to step out unless you step out. And so take advantage of that opportunity. Of course, we have other things that we're doing on our career break. There's a reason why we decided to take one initially, but make you a focus as well and find ways to learn new skills. Find ways to re-engage yourself with past passions that you've lost when you were working and didn't have the time. Now, I want to talk about networking strategy. This is the area where returners say they experienced their biggest challenge. Your loss of professional network is incredibly impactful. Up to 85% of jobs, according to LinkedIn, are filled through networking. Now, we can have that killer resume, but if nobody is listening, if nobody is reading that resume, it doesn't really matter if we have a great career break story. So, and that's not even, 85% of jobs that are posted, that's not even considering the hidden job market. And many of us know this intuitively, and we feel it on our own when we're trying to return. And we saw when we were working what types of ways our employer fills jobs and how some of them go unposted completely, and there's already somebody slotted for the position. Well, when we take a step back and we're outside of the office, it only removes us from that process further and makes us feel like we're on an island trying to swim across the ocean on our own to get back to our career. This is, once you figure out what you want your professional life to look like, when you figure out what skills and knowledge you want to use, then you need to find a way to get yourself connected to the work you want to do in the future. So I want to tell you a story about Emily. And Emily was out of the workforce until when her son was born. She went back after maternity leave. She worked for a period of time and realized that it wasn't working for her and that she really did want to be a stay-at-home parent for a period of time. She ended up staying out of the workforce until her son was in second grade. And she was able to get an offer from her former employer that she didn't even apply for. They had a position that she was specifically qualified for, and they called her. And the only reason they called her is because she remained in contact with her former employer. They knew that she had left something that she loved and that she did intend to get back into the workforce at some point. And what I want people to realize is that it may feel awkward to remain in contact with your former employer. And sometimes we're leaving the workforce and we're like, especially in 2020, we're leaving the workforce and we're stressed and we kind of just want to walk away and not have to deal with it for a period of time. But by staying engaged, you can be someone that's reached out to instead of someone searching for a job. And that's what I want for everyone here. I want you to remain in contact with your former employer, even if you don't think that you're going to want to go back to work there. The world changes, people change jobs. And again, we don't know who we're going to be in 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So enabling you to maintain that network is really important. And LinkedIn is a great way to stay connected to people, but if you're not nurturing and cultivating relationships on LinkedIn, it's not really empowering you to feel comfortable to reach out to somebody after an extended period of time. So it does require additional touch points. It requires some communication through the period. The other thing I want you to remember to do is to be top of mind for whatever it is that you choose to be top of mind for, whether it's with your former colleagues and your former employer, or that's with people that you engage with on your daily basis. We often, when we decide to take a career break, don't talk about our former career and we don't talk about what we're looking to get into. But the only way someone can help you get into your next job is if they know what skills you have and what you're searching for. So being top of mind means being there in, like, the seed has already been planted in someone else's mind when the opportunity comes to their plate and they say, hey, wait, I know Emily would be a great fit for this. I'm going to check in and see if she'd be interested, versus you trying to find those hidden opportunities. And I also really want you to think about blending your personal and your professional networks. Again, many of us disengage with our professional network when we're not working, and we don't look at the opportunities that our neighbors and our friends give us. But yet I find it really easy to strike up a conversation with anybody about what they do, what they've done in the past, and why they're on the path that they're on. And so having those conversations and cultivating that part of the relationship, again, just really, first of all, gives you the opportunity to understand your network and be interested in the people that you engage with, the whole person, because we all know that we're something more than just the one lens that people see us through. So giving people the opportunity to understand you from that perspective and giving them the opportunity, giving you the opportunity to understand them, will build that relationship and again, cultivate the ability for you to be top of mind when an opportunity arises. And then again, network is a great way to identify opportunities and generate ideas. If you have been out of the workforce for a period of time and you don't even know what you don't know for what's out there, jobs are changing so rapidly today. And you want to be able to talk to people and bounce ideas off of to say, hey, wait, does this make sense within the context of the way things are working today? One of the things that I found really interesting, again, we left the US for 5 years when we were overseas. And while I worked part of the time over there, I hadn't been in an American office place in 5 years. And I was really interested that work from home, while it wasn't common yet, COVID hadn't happened, but work from home was a lot more, remote positions were a lot more common when we returned to the US than when we had left 5 years prior. And when I was trying to balance early motherhood with my daughter, work from home allowed me to remain employed while I was going through some challenges. And I thought that I would never be able to find that when we returned back to the US. But in talking with people, understanding the opportunities were out there, I realized that this roadblock that I thought existed actually wasn't as significant as the reality. So it can be from an actual functionality perspective and understanding what you think is possible in the workforce, as well as, hey, what are some new ways I can deploy these skills that I have? I'm going to give you an example of a group of people who often have a career change. Teachers. There are many teachers who have a career in teaching for an extended period of time, but then at some point decide to leave the industry and decide to do something different. There are all kinds of ways that teaching skills and educational skills can be redeployed in a corporate setting, for instance. There's always training in different types of companies. And so those skills can often be used differently, but when you're the person trying to see what is out there, it's hard to know unless somebody's giving you those types of ideas. And lastly, I have bulleted here, keep a killer resume. I don't say write a killer resume. And the reason is because if you're going to be available for opportunities that come your way, you don't want to have to write that resume when somebody tells you to send it. I think everybody's been there at some point in their life where they're like, I've got to have a resume in 2 days to this person. Well, it's not going to be your easiest task to write an effective resume at the end of an extended career break. So developing that resume, keeping it, having it up to date, including those confidence boosts, those things that you're really proud of, even if they are not professionally related, updated on your resume and ready to go will mean that you're ready to give it to the person who gives you the opportunity on their schedule, not when you decide you're looking for a job. So keeping that versus just writing it when the opportunity comes up is so important. So I want to talk to you for a second about some ways that you can incorporate all of these strategies into your life. And again, I don't want anybody to think that what I'm suggesting is that you have to actually work. Otherwise, you're going to lose other stuff. There are ways that you can do this with as much or as little time as you want to allocate toward it. It really, the most important thing is having a fresh perspective and beginning with the end of mind and really considering, how will I explain this story to a prospective employer on how this experience is valuable to them in the future? And so strategic volunteering, I love personally, because again, purpose is so important for many people who are looking to return to the career place. And when you strategically volunteer, it's volunteering, but with an intent, with a direction. So instead of taking the volunteer opportunity that might present itself to you, it's seeking out, what skills do I want to develop, cultivate, keep, or what group am I interested in that I can professionally benefit as well as have the potential to provide support to an organization that's meaningful to you. This is going to give you a great opportunity to do that from a skill development and cultivation perspective. It's also going to help you expand your network, because when you're volunteering, the probability is you're going to be exposed to people who are different than you, who have had different professional paths and are coming from different walks of life. And so you get to know them on a different type of level. You get to be top of mind for something outside of a traditional workforce, and you're getting to know people that might be impactful to you from a networking perspective along the line of your career return. I also really love mastermind groups because, somebody might say, well, I don't really have the time to volunteer. It's a great idea, but I don't really have my contacts back at my former employer still. It's been a while since I've been out, and I haven't talked to them in 4 years, and I feel weird calling them now. But mastermind groups are a great way for you to connect with other people who are at different stages related on a common topic. So one of the things that I did when I was really concerned about how I was going to return to the workforce was I just asked other women who were on career breaks as well to be a career break mastermind group with me. And we would meet on a monthly basis and talk about the challenges of returning and talk about what our fears were and, celebrate the wins that we would have together that, we felt not comfortable talking with non-career breakers about, but as a group, we really supported one another. And that group empowered one to go back to work. Another one started her business. Another one realized that what she was aiming for was not actually where she wanted to go, and that she wanted to keep her career break longer, that she had reasons to stay out of the workforce for longer. Mastermind groups can be something that you join someone else's or create it yourself. I mentioned earlier that women who have made career decisions are often really open and honest about them when you ask them out of the work setting. And women who have been there and done that, they want to support other women they remember those challenges as well. So creating groups around you of people who have a like-minded goal can really help you, again, find new ideas and explore industries that you haven't been exposed to, make contacts with people that you didn't know how you were going to connect with, and really build confidence. And then lastly, I really like cross mentoring. And, for someone who's been on an extended break, they might be thinking, well, what am I going to mentor somebody about? All of those skills that you used when you were in the workforce and all of those things you're doing while you're on a break, they still exist. They still have value. And oftentimes there are ways that we can reconnect with professional employment or the changes in technology, for instance, that happen in the workforce while we're gone by mentoring someone our junior and giving them access to the knowledge and the life experience that we've had. So cross mentoring can be great because it doesn't have to be just us mentoring someone and kind of bequeathing our knowledge. The best mentoring relationships are the ones where both people contribute their skills and their knowledge and experience. And that goes from both ways. Women who are on career break have navigated really challenging decisions, and you have value to add to someone as well as benefit from someone who can help you get engaged on what skills and what technology are required in the workplace of your choice in today's world. So the real key takeaways I want you to get out of today is that you can address the real challenges of returning to work during your career break, and you can be in a position to get a job in the future that is more effective and better than if you were not to address the real challenges. Let's get out of the fear and let's get into the actual challenges that we do face. And when you're going back to work, I want you to show that to a prospective employer that your ambition didn't die when you took a break. You don't have to work a traditional full-time job to show them that you kept your professional development and your skill development and being a lifelong learner through the entire time of employment. And don't focus on the de-skilling piece. I just read a really interesting statistic, and I have to look back and make sure it's accurate because I was so shocked, but it said that more than half of the employees in the US at Apple do not have a 4-year degree. And there are many companies who are no longer requiring a 4-year degree. What does that mean to us? What it means is that traditional skill set that employers wanted is not what they're looking for today. They're looking for problem solvers. They're looking for people who have adaptability skills. They're looking for people who can understand context, and who better than someone who has made the challenging decision to take a step out and find ways to navigate a new path forward. And finally, we are the ones to write the story about why we're the best candidate for the job. We can't expect employers. We can't go in and say, this is why I took a career break, and then expect them to create the story of why we're valuable. We really need to tell them exactly why our experience and our skill sets make us uniquely positioned in today's workforce to have those skills that employers are looking for. And I hope this gives you some context for how you can really create an effective strategy for you. My goal is that this is a framework, and you get to pick what's important to you and how you can employ it in your personal life and with your personal circumstances, whatever you choose to do. And so from that, I'd love to open it up to any questions.
Thanks so much, Janice. We did have a few questions come through, but I want to remind everyone, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. You can leave questions as yourself or anonymously. I know I saw a few come in through the chat, but we're going to be looking there first in the Q&A to answer these questions. So let's jump right in. Great question here from Christiana. She says, how do you cultivate your network if you've already been on break and silent for the past 9 months? Do you have any advice on how to get back on people's radar?
Yeah. So, 9 months is way easier than 9 years. And career breaks can be challenging, but really a lot of times people that were interested in your professional life before are still interested in your professional life after. So I think you want to be strategic on who you reach back out to first. And, thinking that, oh, it's been 9 months is really it's your perspective, but it's not the reality. I want you to just try it. Just do it. Just reach back out to them and say, hey, COVID, here's a great way to do it. If it's been over COVID situation, reach back out and say, hey, I know that 2020 was incredibly challenging. Cheers to 2021. How have you managed through XYZ? And then you can relate it to whatever your industry is, whatever that person's personal circumstances are. And then that really gives you something to talk about. Everyone has something to talk about in 2020. And so whether you choose to make that really industry specific and skills related, or you choose to just say, hey, how are your kids? Here's what we did this past year since I left. That is a way that you can just start to have those conversations. I think COVID has given us the ability to talk about something that we've never had before, but really it's finding one thing in your personal life or professional life, whatever you've done during your break, find one thing that would be interesting to that one person that you choose first to reach out to, and engaging with them on that. And asking them questions about their life and what they're doing is often a great way to initiate, because you feel like you have to come with something impressive, right? Like, I've done some kind of big thing over this past however long my break is. But just showing genuine interest in the other person and what they're doing right now is a great way to start connecting again.
Perfect. An anonymous attendee wants to know, how would you recommend listing a career break on your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, so I've seen it done a few different ways, and it's perfectly fine to just say, so if you're currently on break, say that you are currently on a career break. You could show it as a position if it's like if you've gotten back into the workforce, and then just show a time out of the workforce for XYZ if you want to say for XYZ, or you can also say something about it in your summary. Because I think if you say it in your kind of chronological time frame, you're not giving yourself the ability to spin it and again tell that story. So if you do that, or even if you don't, I'd like to see something in your summary saying, while I was out, and this is not the most articulate way to say it, but while I was out, here's some of the really cool stuff I did. And, LinkedIn has become so much more personable. And so when you say, here's the really cool thing that I did, it doesn't have to be, again, I started a company, I wrote a book. It can be whatever you've been engaged in. It can be personal. It can be, I helped my kid navigate a challenge. I managed through COVID by doing XYZ. It can be a variety of different things, but just call it out. And then it's going to make you feel more comfortable that if you do connect with someone through LinkedIn, that they've already seen this. It kind of diffuses that, like, oh, I've got to tell them I took a break. But yet it starts to let you tell the story of, hey, here's what I did with my break.
Perfect. We have a question here from Patty. I'm going to condense it a little bit, but essentially the question is around navigating a break later in your career, specifically due to burnout. So how do you navigate that in general? Do you talk about that? Do you have to talk about that? And then if you are, how are you going about that? Just kind of like navigating the break that you took because simply you were burnt out from the workforce.
So I really want everyone to focus less on the cause of their break and focus more on what you did with the break. And that I think is really important here because, what an employer today needs and wants to know about you is not what they needed and wanted to know about you 3 years ago. And, so when you focus on the reason that you left, you're not focusing on the person you are today. And I think for a person who did leave specifically because of burnout, that personal assessment piece is going to be so important, because what you don't want to do, and what I want women who are on break, especially if your break hasn't been too long yet, it's really easy to recreate burnout, even though that's not what you want. And that can be whether it's professional, paid work, or it can be if you're on a career break. We can build a life that's just as stressful for ourselves on break as that we were living before, because that's the lifestyle that we're used to. So really doing that personal work to create boundaries, if you are a person who needs to have better boundaries at work, understanding if it was industry related and you really want to work in a different arena, building something to explain why you want to go into what you want to go into and why it works with your life is so much more important than saying, I left for childcare, I left for burnout, I left for whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. You don't have to tell people why you left, but it's more important that piece of what you were doing in that time. I think that's really great. A question here from Lee. I know you touched on this during your presentation. You gave some great examples as well, but they want to know if you have any more, like they said, typical circumstances to do to get noticed. But I'm thinking if there's anything anyone can apply to get noticed. They've been out of the workforce for 5 years and they're not really getting noticed. So, beyond just messaging a former colleague or something like that, what are some other tactics they can take to get noticed?
Yeah. So, one of the things you can do is if depending on your industry, and this is going to be very case by case, right? But it can involve what looks like traditional learning, but it doesn't have to be done in a traditional way. So for someone who's trying to get back into an industry where there's any form of certification that can benefit from that, there are really affordable ways to get excellent information and research and education from top universities through things like Coursera or edX. And, so I would look at what skills do you want to highlight to the prospective employers in the industry and in the arena you're looking to go back into, and how can you highlight yourself for those? And if you don't feel that you have anything specific, create it. Find a way to get that. Find a way to, writing. The freelance economy is alive and well. So it can be writing, finding ways to get published in something specific that you want to be known for. It can be finding gigs, doing side gigs so that you have something that can show, hey, I did work on something like this. And this is, again, for somebody who's probably more in the path that they actually do want to be working a little bit. But doing those activities will create the opportunity to get noticed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's all about thought leadership. If you can make yourself a thought leader in this space, you're automatically going to get noticed by being a leader. And then it looks like we have one more question here from Bonnie Jean. She no longer has emails of her former coworkers, her employer. Oh, I'm sorry, my dog wants to say hi. Her former employer changed email systems and she lost contact with them. She wants to know if social network messaging is still acceptable. And then I'll add on to that, where should people be connecting with one another online? Which social media should we maybe stay away from? And which ones should we rely on?
Yeah. So, I think you want to look at what was that relationship before you left the workplace and then what would be most appropriate. So there's some people who I'm friends with on Facebook and Instagram that are from my old workplace, but it's not my former boss, right? And when you want to be looked at from a professional standpoint, you want to be using places like LinkedIn and Fairygodboss. You don't want to be using Facebook because people have an intent when they go to different social media platforms, and you want to make sure that your content is matching the intent. And so, I think that's kind of the first thing I would say. The second thing, when you lose, sometimes, they change email platforms, or for whatever reason, you don't have access. I absolutely think that it is okay to reconnect with people through LinkedIn that you haven't been in contact with. And it actually may feel a little more comfortable if it feels too direct for you to send an email or make a call to somebody that you haven't talked to in 5 years, because then it's not like you don't know when they see it, right? So they can decide when or if to respond. Now, the issue with social media responses or communication is really that you don't know if they see it. Not everybody is as active on LinkedIn as they are on the work email. So I think you want to look at their activity on LinkedIn and make sure that it appears that they actually use it. Because if they've got 12 contacts on LinkedIn and they don't seem to have done anything on there since, like, I don't know, LinkedIn started a million years ago, then that's not going to be helpful. And then you're going to feel uncomfortable because you're like, I reached out and I don't even know if they saw it. So pick somebody who's active on there. Definitely reconnect with as many people as you can from your former employer through there. And it is completely socially acceptable to use the messaging channel through that to talk to people.
Yeah, that's a really important point of, are they even active on this platform? Because it's very easy to send out 1,000 messages to people, but if none of them are active, you're going to have no success and kind of get down on yourself. And I think that was a great point you made about people go to different social media for different intents. They're not going maybe to Facebook to look for a job. One thing I will note that I've seen in the past is it also depends on the industry that you're applying for. For a lot of jobs, Twitter is not the place to go. However, if you work in media and journalism,
Yes.
I've actually seen people apply for jobs directly to somebody on Twitter in a tweet. And I'm like, that to me is still pretty shocking. So wouldn't recommend it for everyone, but it's just something that, you do want to be conscious of while you're, looking for different ways to connect with one another.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Sam.
I think that's everything. I want to say thank you so much, Janice, for your time today and for answering all of our questions. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. Like I mentioned before, I'll be sending out the recording later today, as well as some of Janice's contact info. And Janice, where can people reach you if they want to connect with you?
Yep. So you can see on the slide right now, you can just contact me directly at hello@moneycareermotherhood.com. And you can check out the website, same thing, moneycareermotherhood.com. And I'm on Instagram under the same as well. And also on Fairygodboss under Money Career Motherhood.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. We will catch you at the next webinar. Bye.